Welcome to Stewardology, a podcast where two worlds collide. In this show, financial advisor Tim Russell and Pastor Drew Gysi are joined by me, producer Tyler Rutherford, to explore the intersection of financial stewardship and theology. Their unique perspectives help Christians and churches understand and apply a biblical framework for everyday financial decisions so Christians everywhere can grow in their walk with Christ through biblical stewardship. Before we get started, we just wanted you to know that the topics discussed in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations. Investment and investment strategies involve risk, including the potential loss of principal, and past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Securities and advisory services are offered through Genius Wealth Management, member FINRA, and SIPC. Without further ado, here are your hosts, Tim Russell, Drew Gysi, and Tyler Rutherford.
Welcome to the Stewardology Podcast. My name is Tim Russell, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Tyler Rutherford.
Howdy.
And Drew Gysi.
Hey.
And today we're going to be tackling a rather interesting, exciting, or perhaps an alarming trend that's very popular around today. It's called micro-retirement. We actually titled this episode, Micro-Retirement. Laugh now, cry later. So this topic we're seeing among Gen Z populations. These are the guys who are probably getting out of college and high school right about now. And they're interested in micro-retirement. So what exactly is micro-retirement? Micro-retirement is taking extended breaks from work to travel and to pursue pleasure. Is it a bold new approach to life? Or perhaps is it a risky move that could lead to financial and career challenges down the road? Let's dive into this topic today.
Well, I think it's important, why do we even discuss this? And we'll see as we go forward that a lot of this comes down to how you view work. And how you view work and rest and other things is actually really important theologically, right? Because work is a good thing and rest is a good thing. Work isn't something to be escaped. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, this is just an interesting cultural shift that I think we have to address a little bit and see where it goes.
And a good scripture to kind of start off this thinking, this processing pertaining to work comes out of Colossians 3:23 and 24. And this is what it says: whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive an inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. So work is not just a means to an end. What we're seeing here in that little short passage, it's a way to glorify God with what we do day in and day out.
Well, I would even go so far as to say that verse and the verbiage in that verse really closely equates work with worship.
Amen.
That one of the ways that we worship God is through the way that we work. And when we simply pursue pleasure, which, by the way, we're not opposed to vacations. We're not opposed to having time with family. But if we see work as an obstacle to what we want in life or what God has placed us on earth to do in life, we're avoiding the worship that God has called us to do through our work. All right. So we got the information about the micro-retirement trend from a particular article, Tyler, that you came upon in Forbes magazine. Is that right?
Yeah, and I don't particularly enjoy this article either, but I saw it and I sent it to you guys. I was like, this is really interesting, but it's called Micro-Retirement, the New Career Trend Rising Among Gen Z. Now, just to give you a little bit of a summary of this article, what it does is it recognizes that I think it's 13% of current retirees are actually exiting retirement, going back into the workforce. And so young people, Gen Zers, they see this and they think, oh, well, if retirement isn't really a sure thing, why not just do some of that now? And so Gen Z, what they're doing, or what is a common and upcoming trend, is that they'll take extended times of vacation, rest. They'll maybe take a year and go travel and showcase that on, Instagram or whatever. And then they'll come back and they'll work maybe project-based jobs, short-term jobs, maybe fill-in positions. They'll make some money, and then they'll go do what they need to do in their quote-unquote micro-retirement. Now, we have a lot of thoughts on that. None of us actually agree with this trend, just to be fully upfront with you there. And
It's a terrible idea.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
we'll talk a little
Such a
bit
bad
more
thing.
about that. But this is interesting. Micro retirements, like little tiny retirements here and there throughout your working career. And there's some problems with that we'll talk about. But that's generally what this article is talking about. And
Well, one of the things that we're seeing with this Gen Z, with this micro-retirement, is they're putting a focus on having the fun, the relaxation. And I'll even go as far as I've heard, they want to get to a point where they just have their own personal sanity. The stress level is reduced. And so they may, don't know that for sure, work hard, or maybe just work, and then now they're taking an extended break, and that extended break is going to help them kind of rejuvenate, get going again to be able to move forward. And it's these extended breaks that really can be that challenge. And I think that's what all three of us are wrestling with these challenges that could be happening for these people that are saying, hey, I just need a year, 18 months off.
I think from a biblical perspective, though, when we just think about wanting to take a lot of time off of work, we're missing the point of work. And there's a passage in Genesis 2 that says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to keep it.
Yes.
So we have to recognize that work is actually a gift from the Lord. It's not some like evil conniving thing that's a result of the fall, and now we're just forced to grind out our lives doing something for them. No. Work's actually a good thing that God created, and it's actually for our good and for His glory. And, from the beginning, God designed it. He designed work as a part of our human purpose. It's not punishment for something that you did wrong, right? So I think micro-retirement, while it's appealing to want to take time and go travel or do whatever it is you want to do, it undervalues the dignity of work and what God designed it to be.
Yeah. Is work an obstacle to your enjoyment?
And I think you said that so well, Tim. And that's been, I think, the thing when we started talking about this. I've been wrestling with this because this generation is thinking pleasure is the purpose.
Yeah. Why do you exist?
Exactly. And that is not what the purpose of our belonging, of our existence, of us being here for.
Yeah.
God has designed us to glorify Him in all that we do.
Yeah, well, to be fair, we're not opposed to pleasure.
No.
We're not opposed to vacations. We're not opposed to fun. But we feel like there's a false dichotomy to say it's either work or fun.
Right.
Like, why can't you pursue work that is fulfilling and full of what gives you joy and energy? If you're stuck in a dead-end job, in a career that is grinding you down, then I understand the desire to escape that. Question, first of all, what is God doing in this moment?
Yeah.
Well said.
What are the rough edges that God is trying to work off of you?
Yeah.
And secondly, what are the ways that God has uniquely gifted you and uniquely wired you for service? I would encourage you to try to pursue ways of moving towards that lane rather than the lane you're in if you're struggling with finding meaning, purpose, and worth in your work. So that's why I would highly encourage our younger listeners as they're thinking about why they're so struggling with work, why this appeal for, micro retirements are so appealing. I would encourage you, stop. Just rethink what you're doing. Revisit why you work in the first place. What is the purpose of work? What is the worship in work? What is God doing for you, through you, and for the world through your work? And find the meaning there. It is actually a spiritual battle that we are in. The spiritual battle that we want to avoid hard things, avoid work, avoid any amount of discomfort, and just pursue the pleasure. That creates soft men, and please forgive me for being male-centric here, but soft people, right? It creates soft people, and soft people create the opportunity for tyrants to come in. We need to be willing to do hard things. We need to be willing to put our nose to the grind, to work it out, because that's how we make a culture. That's how we build a society. We don't build societies on vacations. We build it on the backs of people who got down and dirty and got the work done.
What's that phrase? If you enjoy your job, you will never work a day in your life.
Yeah, it's not true, but
Yeah.
Well, but I understand. But
Get the idea behind it.
Yeah.
The idea behind it is phenomenal. My wife tells me often, she'll say, Drew, what you're doing today, working with Life Institute and helping people with their stewardship, their finances, she tells me often, this job is so you. Now, I typically then turn to her and say, and being a pastor wasn't? I never said that. But she's right. There's a passion that, yes, I had as a pastor, but I love what I'm doing now also. It wakes me up in the morning to see lives loosen the grip on money so that they can have greater generosity to kingdom work so more people will come to know Christ and grow in Christ. I love that. Why not work toward finding a job you enjoy? I was just with my small group on Sunday. We had a woman that's in our small group. She's 90. At 50 years of age, she went back to school to do her dream, to become a nurse. And she loved it. She worked hard for years to get that nursing degree, but she worked for years and loved it. Why not get to that point, rebrand yourself so you're enjoying what you're doing instead of having that drudgery day after day?
Well, I think we've been moving into the second point of our outline here, which is our initial reactions and philosophy of work. So let's kind of work out some of these things. What are some of the, when someone chooses a micro-retirement lifestyle, how is that problematic?
I'm going to say the first thing would probably be that they are not able to continue to put money away for what I would call real retirement or what would be the normal retirement, what we have today. Because what they're doing, they're taking time off and now they're spending money to be able to, and then they're not able to put money away for those days that they need it. That becomes that challenge. And we see this all the time with our parent company, Life Financial, with Life Institute, and even with our stewardship reviews we do with Stewardology, that people are getting to 60, my age, a little younger, and they never were intentional in putting money away, and they're saying, can I retirement? And the crazy, sad, heartache thing we have to do is look them in the eye and say, not for quite a while.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing about micro-retirement, right? Because when you're dealing with micro-retirement, you can only do that for so long. At some point, you're not going to be able to grind it out like you could in your 20s when you're 50 or 60 or 70 or 80. Like, you can't micro-retire at 80. You're going to have to actually real retire at some point. And I know there are examples of plenty of people who are working very fruitful lives into their 80s, but these guys are also, guys and girls, are the ones who have never taken a day off, it seems, in their entire life. They just work all the time. So do you think that someone who's used to fancy trips and all these vacations all the time is going to be content to continue grinding it out in their 90s or 80s or 70s?
They're not going to have the energy.
No, not at all.
Unlikely they will have the energy for it.
So there are a couple things that we talk about dangers. I think one of the biggest dangers is philosophic danger, because we see that work is the enemy of pleasure. That work is the enemy of me finding purpose and meaning in life, where actually God created man and gave him work, right? What's the first thing that God created after he made all of creation and man, he said, okay, now you're in the garden. Here's the thing. The garden was perfect, right? He said, it was good. It was good. It was good. It was good. He made man. It was very good, right? We all acknowledge creation was beautiful, but it was creation in its raw state. He then said, okay, I'm taking Adam and Eve, I'm taking mankind, and I'm putting you in the garden in raw creative potential, and I'm going to give you a job. By the way, job came before fall, job came before curse. And that job was to care for, to work the ground, and to keep the ground, to work it and to keep it. We're to cultivate, to help refine, to help improve creation. That's what work is all about. And when we see work as the opposite of what we're here to do, we miss the whole purpose for what God put us on this world to do. God put us on this earth to get stuff done, to help improve this planet, to help improve the world so that it can better reflect his glory. It can better meet the needs of people around us. So when you pursue micro-retirements, you are robbing all of society from your God-given gifts, talents, and energies that he has placed you on this earth to do a particular thing, and you're saying, no, I don't want that thing. I want to play. I'm a spoiled, entitled child, and I just want to go to the beach and play. I'm sorry, my friend. If you still call me a friend, I'm sorry, but you're missing the purpose that God put you here for. Work is not a drudgery. It doesn't have to be a drudgery. Work is part of the purpose of your existence. It's part of the purpose of mankind's presence on earth.
When I sit back and I think about that garden, you said something that it was in its raw state. I've not heard that before. I can't say yes or no. We haven't been there. But I always wonder, Adam and Eve were told to work the garden. Were there weeds? Did they have to yank the weeds out of the garden? I mean, I sit back and think about those weird things.
I would say probably not the weeding part, perhaps, but the cultivating of the ground and creating actual flower gardens, bringing plants together,
tending fruit trees.
Well, creating cultivation for land. Mm-hmm. Right. So it could be all a slope, and, it would be better if I could build up a retaining wall here and have a flattened area where I can plant things a little better. That's a part of taking raw creative potential and improving it. Not that it was not good before. It was good.
Right.
But now it's better.
Yeah.
And that's one of the amazing miracles about what God did for mankind. He said, I created this perfect world, and I'm placing you in it, and I'm going to let you make it better. Mm. Now, often what we do is through some through our work and some through our just stupidity, we abuse and denigrate this earth. Now, I'm not a tree hugger. I'm not one that says that, earth is the highest good. Mankind is the highest good here on earth. We have to care about making sure mankind can flourish, but we can't have a flourishing mankind if we have an abuse of nature. That's why we shouldn't be polluting our streams. That's why we shouldn't be polluting our skies and our air. We should be wise about those things, but that also doesn't mean that we shouldn't then seek to cultivate it. I said this in a previous podcast before, but I was going through a class on a biblical theology of investing, and the guy made a point. He said, look, there's a reason why the story of the Bible starts in a garden in the book of Genesis, but ends in a city. Mm-hmm. It ends with the city of God, the New Jerusalem, where it's all perfection. It's all cultivation. It's the fullest manifestation of the work that God placed us here to do. We're not just here to be garden tenders. We're here to be culture builders, and that happens through work.
I'm grateful for that because I do not have a green thumb.
Amen.
I am not good at that. So let's kind of do a little bit of a pivot here, and let's talk about, Tim, you're an employer. You have people that work under and for you. Talk to me about, as an employer, wanting to hire somebody that has left the workforce for an extended period of time. Give us your thoughts on that hiring process, thinking on your part.
I've got a number of different thoughts. The first is that one thing I absolutely notice, especially for younger people, is that their amount of time at a particular job tends to be very short. So I see numerous jobs, short periods of time. Some of that's normal and natural, right? You're going to work for a summer or for a small season, and then you're just transient when you're younger. And I get that to an extent. But when you're now 30 and you can't hold a job for more than a year, I start to wonder, is it the job or is it you? If I hire you and put all this time and energy and money into training you, are you just going to up and leave in a year? I don't want to do that. I don't want to invest in that. So when I see a lot of gaps in employment and many different kinds of employment, I automatically get suspicious. Another thing that I think about as an employer is when I'm sitting down with a team member, this is probably very specific to the fact that we're a Christian company. We tend to work with a lot of Christians. So the people who like to work with us tend to be from our religious environment, right? The conservative Christianity. And when I ask this question, why do you want to work for the Life Financial Group? I have learned that when I hear the answer, well, you're a Christian company, I would really love to work for a Christian company that's a positive and encouraging environment. I have learned to pass on that employee. Don't you want someone who wants a good Christian environment? Isn't that a good sign? Yes, it is. But if that's all that they want to do, they personally simply want to be in a safe environment that's not going to violate their moral standards and all of that. Well, yeah, we can do that, but we don't exist to do that. We don't exist for our employees. We exist to have our employees help us to fulfill a mission that requires work, energy, effort, and initiative. And if my prospective employee can't show me that they're actually committed to the vision of helping Christians become even better stewards of all of their assets and pour their heart and soul into that, I've learned, some through hard knocks, that they're not the right team member for me. Because they're not committed to work for me because they're committed to the mission, that they're committed to work itself. They're committed to, I want to work easy. I want to work without being pushed. I want to work without having expectations on me.
Safe environment.
Safe environment.
Yeah.
Now, again, I want to create a safe environment. I want to create an environment where everyone can flourish. But I don't want you to come here for that alone. I want you to come here for many more reasons about the mission and your engagement with it. So if you're looking at this video in the future and trying to apply, keep that in mind.
I think there needs to be a caveat, though, that we need to bring into this discussion. And that caveat is there are jobs that are more project-based, that you are doing a project for a company, then you do that for a season, then you can either do a different project or something similar with that same company or go to another company. I know a gentleman, in fact, Tim, I believe he's one of your clients now. He was part of my small group at one point, and he would just go project to project working for a major energy supplier, and he would be under contract for 1 year, 3 years, do the project. Now the project's coming to an end, he would have to re-up for either that same company or look elsewhere. Now, by God's grace, he's been with the same company for many years in doing this. But there is that caveat, and I think that needs to be brought into consideration, right, Tim?
Well, yeah, obviously. If someone is project-based like that, often I kind of view them more as self-employed. They may go from project to project, but they're essentially getting paid 1099. They're filing a Schedule C. Obviously, some projects will pay you a W-2, which is kind of a salary wage as an employee, but many of them will be 1099. So you're basically self-employed. So no, I don't count that against someone. However, I do I do want to acknowledge, you talked about the project-based thing. I think there's also an argument that someone's going to have and say, well, Tim, you don't understand. My job is fully remote and I can do my job anywhere I want to. So I could work from Kansas in the middle of cornfield, or I could go to the Riviera and be in a Airbnb in the Riviera and work during work hours and play during play hours. What's wrong with that? I think what's wrong with that is that I have a big problem with the whole work from home idea, because I find there's more home and less work when that happens. That's not universally true. I think there are always exceptions to that, and employers need to make wise decisions based on what they know about their team member. But I think the assumption should be that they're actually working together as a team. Remember what I said about this micro-retirement trend robbing society? When we have people that are doing this work from afar or mobile work, they're robbing their coworkers. They're robbing the people below them, younger than them in their career, and maybe even those who are older than them in their career, to be able to learn from others or to teach others, depending on, which side of the age gap we're looking at. So I really love when people actually get together and work together, because there are synergies, there are benefits that happen when you work in the same building. That just can't happen when you're all on Zoom, working from home or working from home, air quotes there.
I think there's another issue too with, let's say you take your micro retirement and for an entire year in your 20s, you're not putting into a 401k. Well, it's interesting, right? Because how compound growth works is those dollars that you're putting in right now, maybe as a 23, 24-year-old, are actually going to be worth a lot more 40 years down the road. And so you're actually stealing from yourself the ability to grow that money. And if you do that like for a year or for 6 months, and you do that actually like regularly, every couple of years, you're just pausing retirement savings and investing, that can create a bigger problem down the road where you might not have enough funding for actual retirement when your body can't do the work that you've been doing your whole life. So that's something to think about too. And kind of along the same lines, we've dealt with this recently in my family, is you get old and you're probably going to get sick. Dying of natural causes, I don't think is normal anymore, unfortunately. A lot of the times you're dealing with mental degenerative disease, cancer, something else that requires a boatload of money to treat or to put you in a place where they can treat you. And if you don't have the resources to pay for that, a lot of times you end up having to go through the state-sponsored home, state-sponsored care, which just isn't as good.
It's not.
So think about that too. We're not just preparing to get sick and die. That's not like why we're doing what we do. But this is something that you have to think about when you're young, and I can invest for the future. And there are things that can happen. Like it's going to be good to save.
Can I put a little fuel on that fire?
Please.
How does compound interest work? Let's just say you take $10,000 that you could have invested in retirement in your 20s. And I know you're probably thinking in your 20s, what are you dreaming? Who's got $10,000 to invest in retirement in the 20s? Just work with me for a minute. Just breathe. Okay, so
this is financial advisor coming out.
If you would invest that into a 401k, or let's just say Roth IRAs over the course of, let's say, 2 years, and allow it to grow for 35 years and just get less than the S&P 500 has averaged. Let's just say 9%. The S&P is averaging around 11, 12% a year. Let's say you just get 9% a year. That $10,000 would have grown to $230,000 at the end of 35 years. Mm-hmm. Okay, hold on a second. So you're telling me that you're willing to spend almost $250,000 on a vacation? No, I would never spend that on a vacation. That's crazy. Well, yes, you're spending $10,000 in your 20s on your micro-retirement, costs you $230,000 in missed growth. And you do that the next year, or maybe 5 years after that, and another 5 years, that starts to add up, and your potential future savings is greatly diminished. So, Tyler, to your point, compound interest is amazing. The biggest rule in compound interest is don't interrupt it.
Yeah.
Don't take money out of it. Keep the money invested and keep on investing. Look, I don't want you to assume that this is some kind of a guarantee. Past performance is no guarantee of future expectation returns. But let me tell you, it does help us to kind of visualize the potential costs of spending money recklessly in our youth.
Yeah. And just to bring back that caveat that we mentioned earlier, we're not against fun and traveling and doing great things with your family that require spending money. We're not against those things, but the trick is having everything in the right priority. Yeah, having everything in line in your life and not misprioritizing something that you shouldn't be doing.
So let's prove the fact that we're not anti-fun. Tyler, what fun do you have with your family this year?
I went to Hawaii in February, which you're going to hear this and be like, wow, you can afford to go to Hawaii. Like, no. But here's what happened. We know somebody who has an apartment out there, and they also have a car out there, right? So my trip to Hawaii with my family was actually greatly reduced in price because we saved a lot of money on those things. We didn't have to pay for them. So would I have spent the full price to go to Hawaii? Probably not. Not in this stage of my life. Maybe in like 30 years, perhaps. But right now with our current priorities, no way. But we got a great rate, and we'd probably spend the same amount of money doing something nearby for what we did. So great experience, worthwhile. It was in line with our priorities.
And do you have anything else planned for the remaining part of this year?
My extended family, we all chipped in to go to a beach house in the Outer Banks. So per family unit, it was really a couple $100, like a few $100 per family for the week. So yeah, we're doing that in a few weeks. It's going to be great.
Tim, what about you? Since I just want to prove that we are all for it. Let's have some fun.
In about a month, I'll be flying over to Olympic National Park outside of Seattle, Washington.
Yeah,
and
been there.
We've got about a week riding around that park and seeing all of the different sites to see there. Be the last vacation that I'll have with my entire family before they go off to college and probably start going on in their separate ways.
That's time well spent.
Very, very cool. You know, for myself, like Tyler, we have a coworker that has a apartment in Hawaii. Back in January, I had to go there to work.
Oh, boo-hoo.
I had to work. I had to work in Hawaii and for about 2 weeks out in Hawaii, and we had 2 seminars there. Phenomenal churches. Amen. And just loved working with those 2 churches. And my wife and I stuck around for an extra, I think, 6 to 10 days, 7 days. And we hung out there, didn't have to put a roof over our head, had a vehicle to be able to drive around in, had to basically feed ourselves, which was just short of a mortgage payment in Hawaii right there because of the cost of food there.
Yeah, per meal.
per meal. Thank you,
It is
Tim.
crazy. Yeah.
And then, so that was the big thing. And for me now, the remaining part of this year, I'm taking some staycation time.
Yeah.
I got some projects I want. I have an old car I love working on, and it's been kind of sitting idle, and I need to bring it up to speed. So I'm going to buy a couple parts, and I'm going to get underneath that thing, and I'm going to do some work. And that to me kind of fuels me. And my wife, maybe we'll take a day and we'll do a day trip somewhere. We like getting to the local national parks and stuff like that. We are all for let's have some fun. Do what energizes you. Be with family.
There needs to be time for recovery and rest so that we can work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you just told me that the other day. You said, if you don't remember, I'll remind you. You said, and some people need to take a vacation once in a while. Remember you saying that?
I do.
So,
still stand by it.
Still stand by it. Well, guess what? Going to get that staycation and coming up soon. So I'm going to play with my car. I'm going to come back greasy.
All right. So if I could give a resource to our listeners, I've read a book now probably 2 times. It's by David Bahnsen. He's a fellow Christian financial advisor, has a couple $1 billion firm that he runs in New York and California and a bunch of other locations. He's written a book called Full Time. Work and the Meaning of Life. If I could give a book to every single college graduate, high school graduate, it would be this book. If you are a believer in Jesus Christ and want to better understand what on earth is is work all about, I would give you this book. If we're thinking about mid-career issues, midlife crisis issues, I would give you this book full time. Because again, it helps to recenter, reground, reorient our thinking around work and the whole purpose and meaning of it. I absolutely love the theological, the practical, the economic wisdom that David Bahnsen brings to us in this book. So go out and buy a copy of Full Time. It's a good read. And I think it's really, frankly, very helpful. One of the things that I think we see, especially even in churches, and I'd love to have a podcast to kind of tease this idea out, but so many churches, we look at the different kinds of problems that our churches are dealing with, and as it deals with work, how many times have you heard a sermon about laziness? Very few. Like, I mean, you probably have heard.
I never preached one.
Okay.
I never preached one.
How many sermons have you heard about workaholism?
I can't say just about workaholism, but I will say that it has been
or that's
a
been
part,
a theme of so many different messages,
yes.
Right? It's a big theme. Now, here's a question. Is the biggest problem facing the church the fact that people work too much, or the fact that people don't work hard enough?
Probably the latter.
Yeah, agreed.
Judging by the diaconal fund issues and the challenges that people are facing, which are not all about, trust me, they're not all about the fact that people don't work hard enough, but that's certainly a factor for, you talk to any deacon out there, there's a good number of people that just reach out to the church because they think that they can get money from the church to meet their needs so they don't have to work. Mm-hmm. It's a factor. I was one of those deacons. I saw it. So the church doesn't address the real hard issue that we need to work. We need to get out there. We need to bust our butt, so to speak, and find value, purpose, and meaning in work. Bahnsen talks about that. There's another area that the book is called Full Time, and it's a bit of a take on the book Halftime, which is a Bob Buford book. It's a good book. I've encouraged it to a lot of people.
Golden oldie.
But Bahnsen takes issue with some of the faulty dichotomies that Buford presents in the book. He's like, I don't disagree with the idea that we need to find meaning in work and value with our work, but I have a problem with us saying that it must be ministry, that work isn't in and of itself a form of worship, as we talked about in the verse we just read. So there's so many really powerful ideas that are contained within the pages of this book that I would love for people to really wrestle with and grow through.
Well, one thing I just want to bring in light of this whole idea of micro-retirement, to take extended times off from work, we are living in such a change period. Like, again, I'm 60. I have not seen change like this. Back when I first started in youth ministry years ago, it was kind of normal for what was happening in the West Coast, California. It took approximately 2 years, maybe 3, for it to make it to the East Coast, because they were more the innovators out there. And then I saw it move to 18 months and then 6 months. Things are moving so fast. We are living in an AI age, this artificial intelligence. To take 6, 12, 18 months off from work, jobs are changing so fast that if you were an expert in a field and now you've pulled out, when you try to re-enter, things will be totally different for you, especially today. I saw that there's such a change. I believe it's every 6 months now, all this AI stuff is radically doubling in 6 months. It's probably even faster than that. So you're having this. So a person choosing to step out of that marketplace for that time, even for a short time, there's going to have to be a reintroduction phase that they're going to need to get back in. So you're shooting yourself, not in just one foot, possibly in both, especially with today's fast-paced change that's happening.
So micro-retirement, laugh now, cry later, question mark? That's kind of the title of the episode. And I think now you understand why we titled it that way, because just a little bit of pleasure now doesn't necessarily mean that tomorrow is going to just figure out itself. Yes, the Lord is the one that writes the story, right? He has it all under control. He cares for the lilies of the field and he cares for the birds of the air. And he's going to even care for you at an even much higher level. But that doesn't exclude us from the responsibility to wisely plan and prepare. And by taking extended times off of work, I think we're removing ourselves from that responsibility if not done wisely. So there's a balance here. There's a balance between working and resting. And obviously work and rest are both important, but we have to have them both in check. We have to work hard. We got to love what we do. God calls us to it. It's a good gift that he gave us. And rest is also a good gift that he gave us.
You know, a good passage of scripture, I think, for us to capsulize what we're talking about here, it comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 12 and 13. And it says, I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also that everyone should eat and drink, and here's the point here, and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. What a great passage of scripture for us to understand. It says, take pleasure in all his toil. Take pleasure in his work. Take pleasure in those things. And that is a good gift from the Lord. Remember that as you listen to this podcast, on your way to work, on your way back from work, that job that you have is a glorious gift from your Heavenly Father.
All right, until next time, take care, God bless, and don't go working half-time. Get to work full-time.
Thanks for joining us on the Stewardology Podcast, where financial stewardship and theology meet. We'd like to help you take your next steps in biblical financial stewardship. Subscribe in your podcast provider to get the newest episode delivered to you every week. Leave a 5-star rating and review to help new listeners find the show. Take advantage of your free personal stewardship review at stewardologypodcast.com/review. Be sure to follow us on social media and visit our website at stewardologypodcast.com for tons of free resources and hundreds of free episodes. You can also leave episode ideas at stewardologypodcast.com/idea. Remember, Psalm 20, verse 7, some trust in chariots and some trust in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. See you next week.